In today's video, I'm going to be revisiting Higgins ink and putting it to the test once more. As my knowledge and understanding of inking has grown, I think I'm actually ready to tackle this ink in a proper manner. So let's not waste any time and roll that awesome intro. What's up guys, I'm J-Rod of BATTLEBRAWLERproductions and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, my name is J-Rod as I mentioned before, and we take a look at crafting art through the artistic medium of ink to see what inks will work for your artistic needs, specifically through the lens of comic book art. I know that was a mouthful, but it's pretty much what we do here in the channel. Now today is a very special video because I'm going to be visiting Higgins. Higgins is an ink that I took a look at early on in my career and really did understand the benefits of it. Now that I'm more experienced and have a lot more knowledge under my belt, I really see the appreciation and usefulness of Higgins. While I still wouldn't say it's one of my favorite inks, it's a really valuable tool to have in your tool belt if you plan to craft a lot of inked illustrations. I actually got the chance to revisit this ink and talk a little bit more about it with my updated opinions in a YouTube short video, which I'll link right here if you want to check it out. Overall, to summarize Higgins, it is a great ink for complex ink washes and beautiful watercolor techniques, especially with all the colors they have. So I thought, hey, while I revisit it, why don't I also take a look at one of their colors, and I chose red because it is my favorite color. I feel like with these inks, we're not going to get a lot of solid colors because of its low pigment nature, but we're going to get some really beautiful washes and have a lot of fun crafting some really cool illustrations. So let's go ahead and take a look at this ink in our sketchbook. Yeah, let's try that again. Very nice. I really like that. Now the ink is more pressed, so we're getting a darker red. It will not be the same red when we test it with our brush, and this, I really like this. Now normally I prefer a more crimson, more of a darker red, but I really like this color. I think it's really cool. Definitely could use some fun layering with it. And you can see right there, I'll get towards the end of the dip. It's much thinner. It's actually a lot lighter on camera than it is in person. It's very interesting. But just to comment on how this flows off of a dip pen, it flows really nicely. I really like the flow of it. Very smooth. Not the smoothest ink I've ever used by far, but still not bad. It's going to flow really well in our quill nib, so very excited to test that. In fact, let's go ahead and do that real quick. Yeah, flows really nice and get really good detail. Just to let you guys know, I absolutely love to do cross-hatching detail. It's one of my favorite things. However, the designs that I do for the Wrath and the characters in that universe, they don't have any cross-hatching because they're meant to be these living, not liquid, but muscle creatures. And so the detail work is quite different to make them stand out from their heavily detailed background. Just a fun fact for you. But yeah, flows really nice. It's a little more compressed, so we are getting another example of that just kind of darker red. But as we start to work it and thin it out, it's becoming less compressed. We're getting a lighter, more pink red. Again, I can't wait to see how this ink is going to behave with a brush, because that's going to be the ink's strength, especially with the color. Just push and see what we can do, because now I actually know how Higgins works. Alrighty, here we go. And yeah, I really like that. Definitely more like watercolor. And now that I do a lot of watercolor, I really know how to play with and use this ink. I absolutely love just how this goes down. Very smooth. Now on camera it's a lot lighter than it is in person. Definitely more of a red in person, but it's going down really nice. Very easy, very nice to control with a brush. And if we were to go in with another dip, we can now darken these areas in here. So that's the strength of Higgins, is this layering, this really nice complex watercolor like artwork, this layering, great for ink washes. I want to try some wet on wet real quick. So normally I don't do that with my illustrations, but we're going to wet the paper right here. So just dipping my brush and applying some water right here on the page. Kind of hard to see on camera. In person I can see the shine. Now I'm going to dip the brush in ink, and now I'm going to apply it. And then boom, create these really cool watercolor styles. Really like that. And then of course we introduce water, so the already low pigment ink is going to be a lot more transparent, kind of coming off more pink when I do that. Normally low pigment would be a negative. With Higgins, because of the way they're set up, it is kind of their gimmick, it's kind of their strength. And now again that I understand how Higgins works, I'm really liking this. We can get some really good coloring, some really good tones, especially if you have a bunch of colors. You can just start mixing and matching them and do some really great stuff. Now they do have two versions. They have a waterproof version and a non-waterproof version. I believe this is the waterproof version. And in fact, it should be... oh, no, it is not right here. Never mind. So yeah, I'll double check the packaging and we'll see if it's waterproof. If it is, awesome. If not, we can do some cool blending and some gradients and just a little more complex washes. So very excited about that. So we'll do a quick watercolor test and we'll splice that footage in right now. Adding a generous amount of water onto our page, we can see that this ink is indeed waterproof, which is is always awesome to see, making it more versatile for mixed media applications. We may not be able to do some complex watercolor blends and gradients, but we can still do some great layering and have a lot of fun playing with this ink. This is going to be a really fun project to color. And just like with all Indian inks, this ink is not alcohol marker proof. I did do a quick test right here. Yeah, very excited to do today's illustration, so let's go ahead and get to that. So for today's illustration, we're going to be putting Higgins to the test with a drawing of Wrath. I'm going to do a lot of complex ink washes and a full ink background, so that's why I taped it down to my board. And just like with some of the other pencils we've been inking for the last few weeks, this is an older piece. This is about 1.5 years old, so it's not quite up to my normal standards or style, and there's a few little discrepancies here like in the wings, but for the most part I still think this was a really fun piece, and this is the piece I did have in mind when I was going to revisit Higgins ink with more of those watercolor techniques. So let's go ahead and roll that super time lapse. Inking this piece was very fun and extremely relaxing. It reminded me a lot of watercolors simply because I was basically doing watercolor, which, for those of you who don't know, is one of my favorite mediums to color outside of alcohol markers and gouache. It's just very fun and relaxing. And fun fact, inking and watercolor are basically sister mediums. You use very similar if not the same tools, and it's one of those things where if you're an inker, you will become a watercolor artist. They go hand in hand. The only thing I would have done differently with this piece outside of having some better anatomy, but again, it's an older illustration, I would have done all the line art with my Winsor Newton Black India ink. Only because with Higgins, while you can get a solid black line in a dip pen, it does fade pretty quickly, so you have to dip a little more, just to speed up the process. I worked in layers, did the line art first, then worked all the black tones in, and it was a lot of fun. I just built up my layers slowly and carefully, and really had fun with the entire process. After all the black was in place and I was happy with all the layers, I then went in with all the redding, and just took my time with it, layering bit by bit. Since the red is not as intense of a pigment as the black one, it went down much lighter. And while I'm a fan of deeper and darker reds, almost crimson or Xylene crimson, I still like the shade of red this ink was, and I just had a lot of fun building up those layers, trying to make the object as three-dimensional as I could. I had a lot of fun and did pretty much all of Wrath in the first bit, and then worked on the background, which was just going to be a simple light wash to help blend everything in. It was really fun and nice, and the only real stressful part was twofold. One, when I removed the tape because the paper ripped, which was really unfortunate, and two, I accidentally put in way too much ink when I was coloring in the wing, so I really had to work at it to make sure that the Bristol wasn't super saturated. In retrospect, I probably should have done this on watercolor paper, but oh well, I like Bristol and it got the job done. Overall, now that I've grown as an inker and I have a lot more knowledge under my belt, my appreciation for Higgins has grown tenfold. It's a really good ink to have, and while I still to this day prefer 100% black when I ink, this is a really good tool to have on the sideline. This is something that you can really add into your work. This is something that is a great tool to have in your tool belt, and it will pair well with other inks. Though, because it is Indian ink, do keep in mind you can't use it with alcohol markers. But when it comes to all other mediums, especially this one being waterproof, you can mix this with watercolors and do some really fun techniques. Higgins is really good, and I'm glad I got the chance to revisit it in this video. But let's go ahead and take a look at the piece in all its finished glory. And we're done, and guys, I really like how this piece came out. While yes, the pencils aren't up to my normal standards, I still think all the inking and the washing and just the fun I had making this piece makes it one of my favorites. Not in the top 10 of my favorite pieces I've done this year, but definitely one that I'm very proud of. My only complaint is that when I removed the tape, I did tear up the paper quite a bit. It's hard to see on camera. In person, it's super apparent, and it really sucks because it's just really torn and very obvious. But besides that, I had a lot of fun making it, and I had a lot of fun revisiting Higgins. Hindsight really is 20/20 when it comes to looking back on these inks, because I really like them now. Knowing their limitations, knowing what they're good for, and being able to have that maturity with inking and my journey as an artist, this is a tool that I have to recommend to all ink. It's not the best for those solid blacks, which is what I wanted back then and still want now, but it's great for complex ink washes. It's great for layering, and it's amazing if you want to do awesome watercolor techniques. The fact that this is basically a permanent liquid watercolor, and with the non-waterproof versions is just straight up liquid watercolor, is amazing, and I really like this. I'm really glad I got to revisit Higgins, and my appreciation for them has gone up tenfold. I think I originally gave these guys a 5 or 6 out of 10. I'm going to give them an 8 out of 10. Very versatile in the terms of the wash and the watercolor techniques, but it does hold it back still in my opinion because I like to get those 100% blacks. That in my opinion is the only flaw of this ink, but understandable considering its great potential for layering, especially when you start to introduce water for more layers and washes. Overall, overall, really like this, and I have to recommend it to all inkers. And now I know why this is a standard ink. But that's my opinion. I'd love to hear you guys in the comment section down below. Did you guys learn something from this video? Have you guys been waiting for me to revisit Higgins because of my poor assessment of it in the past? Love to hear you guys' feedback, both on the review and the art itself. It not only helps me become a better artist, but a better content creator. But with that said, subscribe to the channel for more art and animation-based content. And remember, I'm J-Rod of BLACKEST. I draw power in my own soul. Also, I have posters available now. Check out the link in the description. Digital posters and ones that can be printed out on canvas, metal, and other materials that you can hang on your wall. Really does help the channel. Boy!